Welcome back to the End Zone. I'm your host, Paul. With week 2 in the books, we're going to take a look at the fantasy week 2 winners and losers, some trade candidates, and to finish off with some valuable pickups you should be looking for on the waiver wire.
Okay, let's go.
With that being said, if you like our content, please drop a subscribe and follow for more fantasy football advice to win your league.
Starting off with my section, I've decided to rename it to Booms and Busts and add a little bit of injury recap and notable kind of guys that are just out, I guess. But starting off with the Booms, we've got Daniel Jones, 31.7 fantasy points, mostly second half points at that, which is pretty impressive. If he would have just shown up for the first half, it could have been a significantly better outing, I think, for him. But yeah, it was the first offense, just kind of a notable fact. They were the first offense to go scoreless in their first 6 quarters of play since 1992. So it was kind of a rough start for the Giants, but they figured it out and ended up finishing up week 2 1-1. So that's definitely a positive for them. We continuing on, Keenan Allen, 31.1 points in typical PPR formats. He had 8 receptions for 111 yards, 2 touchdowns, and all around it was a very productive day. As long as he stays healthy and in Eckler's absence, you should continue to kind of see some of that good volume coming to him. Then the obvious Puka Nacua, very solid boom. He's been consistent for 2 weeks now in Cooper Kupp's absence. 30.1, no touchdowns, shockingly enough. 15 receptions for 147 yards and a few rushing attempts on that. And then wrapping up our booms, we've got the Steelers defense, which they posted 29 points with 2 touchdowns on what was thought to be a pretty good Browns offense. But yeah, 2 touchdowns is a great night for them. That's a hard pace to keep up with, but still a solid showing. And then onto the bust. So Giants defense, -1 points against, frankly, a pretty shaky Cardinals offense. Quarterback still has big questions, but the Cardinals seem to run it very well with James Conner against them. Trending way down. I don't expect them to do much better than this, and I would not start them for a long time. And then on to the next, Jets running backs. Dalvin Cook, 0.2 points, 4 carries and 7 yards, complemented by a fumble, adding insult to injury. Just not a great night for him. He had a little bit of receiving, but once again, 0.2 points. And then Breece Hall, 0.9 points, 4 carries for 9 yards. Albeit they were playing one of the top 2 defenses in the league, the Cowboys, but abysmal numbers by the two. 1.1 points between the two, and it's a little bit rough. Cam Akers, maybe getting traded, maybe getting cut, we don't know, but he's worth holding on to, I would say, for now, just because he could be going to the Browns, which Nick Chubb's out. I'll touch on that in a second. And then the Ravens with J.K. Dobbins out. So time will have to tell, but I think he's worth holding and see where he ends up. Some notable injuries and guys being out. Nick Chubb, gruesome knee injury. Feel bad for the dude. It's a season ender. Probably safe to drop for the year. Dynasty, put him on in your IR spot and just, I'm sorry, dude. Saquon Barkley with an ankle sprain. Some conflicting reports on it. You're hearing 3 to 4 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, and then regardless, keep him there. He'll be back soon enough. Thankfully, it's not an IR situation yet, and he has potential to be back relatively soon. Anthony Richardson out with a concussion. Will miss at least a week with protocols. And then DeJounte Johnson, placed on IR with hamstring issues. That really hurts. He's going to miss at least 4 weeks just with the IR system. But yeah, that wraps up my section. Thanks so much.
What's up, y'all? It's Ryan from Endzone Sports. Going to cover some buy low, sell high guys going into week 3 of this NFL season. Hope everything's off to a good start on those fantasy leagues. Mine's doing pretty well so far. I'll take what I can get. So let's just jump right into it. So first, some buy low guys. Right now, I think people are pretty upset with how the Bengals are performing. I know I am. Joe Burrow has not been playing to the money that he signed for. I think they could be a sleeping giant, but I know people are pissed off. So I'd look at maybe try and get Jamar Chase for something cheap. I don't know, maybe throw a little wide receiver running back combo and get him in there. I hate putting him in here, but I think it's completely feasible that you could get him for something pretty cheap this early in the season with how people are feeling. I think another good target would be Breece Hall. Jets, what a disappointment. I think if Aaron Rodgers was here, it'd be a different story. But with Zach Wilson, I just don't trust him. I think I don't know. It's been really disappointing. The Jets, it stands to reason that, typically when teams aren't doing too well, they kind of rely on the run a little bit more. So should expect Breece Hall to get some more carries. It's been pretty 50-50 between him and Dalvin Cook so far from what I've been able to watch. I know this past week was not a good indicator for anybody because they were playing the best defense in the league. But it stands to reason that Breece Hall will end up doing pretty well this season, regardless of the Jets' miscues. I think he looks pretty well removed from his injury last year, and he's been performing really well. So good target. I think Isaiah Pacheco could be a good one. Don't really have much to back that up, but I think it could be a decent add. Seems like he's been running the ball pretty well so far for the Chiefs. Chiefs are still, Patrick Mahomes is there. Hard to put him out. And it seems like they could get ahead on a lot of the games that they have this season. So, they should rely on Pacheco pretty heavily like they have the first 2 weeks. 2 more kind of in the same, they're on the same team, kind of in the same vein of my thought process is Nico Collins and Tank Dell, wide receivers in Houston. 2 different players. Tank's kind of more of a speedster. Nico's more that the larger wide receiver. But CJ Stroud been doing pretty well so far. Had a really good game this past weekend against the Colts. Nico had a phenomenal fantasy game. I think he put up like 28 or 29. I don't know. It kind of depends on what you want, I guess. I think Nico could be a somewhat serviceable wide receiver too that you could throw in on the roster. Tank Dell's probably more of a flex option. But there was a lot of talk going into the season that CJ Stroud and Tank had built up a nice rapport. So, maybe something as the season goes along, develop into something a little more than what we've seen so far. But Nico would probably be a safe bet, big-bodied receiver. Hard not to like. Moving on. Some sell high guys before we get into week 3. Feels so weird to say this, but Derrick Henry, this past week, Tyjae Spears got more snaps than him, which is crazy. I love Tyjae. It was big on him getting into the season. So like to see that, but Derrick Henry, he had a good game, but he's old. He's been a little injury prone. And I think with kind of the questions in the passing game in the Titans, I don't know. He's going to get a lot of snaps. No doubt about that. But I think now that he's 30 and he's kind of over that hump, he's probably going to ended up hurt later in the season. He'd be good for you right now. Good to you till week 8, 9 maybe. But, after that, what is he going to give you if he gets hurt? If he hurts his foot again, or if he tweaks his knee and then he's running on stuff like that. It's a little bit more skeptical than it is factual, but just something to think about. Kind of on the flip side of the Breece Hall coin that I mentioned in the buy low, I think Garrett Wilson is still someone that you could get a lot back for. Zach Wilson, like I said, not that guy. It seems like they're good for like 1 touchdown a game. That'll look really good, and it'll be like a 76-yard touchdown reception. This is great. It's 7-8 points, and it won't be much after that. I don't say this as a knock to Garrett Wilson. I say this more of a knock to the Jets and Zach Wilson. He's a phenomenal athlete. I think he's a good wide receiver. I think if Aaron was healthy, he would be probably a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy this year. But I think stands to reason that somebody that's not keeping up in your league as much, try and get Garrett off your team and maybe still get some good return for him. I'd give it a shot. Can't hurt. DeAndre Swift, hate saying this one because he just really helped me out of a tight spot this past weekend, but it does stand to reason, statistically speaking, that he will get hurt at some point, and the Eagles have a lot of guys in the stable, so that he would get replaced pretty easily if he did show any signs of slowing down. Had a phenomenal week this past week. Definitely won me one of my leagues, but statistics, this is forward looking, but trying to help y'all out throughout the rest of the season. Some other names to think about: Raheem Mostert. Miami Dolphins had a great game this past week. Love Raheem. I think he's always been pretty electric, but he's 31. Kind of, I guess, in the same vein of what I said about Derrick Henry. Age plays a factor in any part of the league, but I mean, especially at running back. They have other running backs on the roster. Raheem gets even tweaked up a little bit and can't perform 100%. They're going to give it to A-Chain, and then whenever Wilson kind of gets back rolling, stands to reason that he'll kind of fall.
So last week I mentioned to pick up Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Kieran Williams, Sam Laporta, Jake Ferguson, Rashid Shaheed. All of those guys beat their projected point totals by a significant margin. However, we do all miss. I did mention Roschon Johnson, Tank Bigsby, and Mac Jones. Those three guys did not. I still think they have some bright futures ahead of them, so we'll see what happens. For this week, though, I think that the guys you really want to take a look at and see if they're available and maybe put in a request for. Number one has got to be Jerome Ford. With Nick Chubb's gruesome injury, I think Ford is destined to take over as that RB1 for the system that's been fairly successful. I think that Cleveland heavily relies on their rushing game. I think that Ford should be a pretty good fit there. I think he played pretty well in the Pittsburgh game, and I think that he'll look to build upon that performance going into week 3. Number 2 is going to be Cam Reynolds for the Lions. Look, I know that everyone wants Jahmyr Gibbs to get more touches. I do too. I think it'll be a lot more exciting. However, with David Montgomery out for multiple weeks, the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, he's kind of lied about saying how, creative he's going to put Gibbs in all these, unique situations. So I'd see, Reynolds as being a potential guy to keep tabs on, especially if the Lions continue with their 2 running back kind of approach. I think number 3, I'm going to go with Jaylen Warren. Warren is still the second string guy to Najee Harris, but Najee Harris has not played well so far. And I think in week 3, Warren should get a little bit more touches. He's always been a solid receiving threat. And I think that, if you have Najee Harris, this guy might not be a bad pickup, especially in the event of a poor performance, insurance, or maybe even an injury. So number 4, we're going to go with Tank Dell. I was really high on Dell going into this season, and especially going into the draft. I think that he's had a pretty effective game last week, but I think that he's going to continue to build his chemistry with CJ Stroud, and I think he could be a good, solid, sneaky flex down the road. My only hesitation is he was going to pretty questionable Indianapolis Colts secondary, but if he continues to grow, 10, 11 targets a game is not out of the picture. Number 5, going to go with Tutu Atwell. So Atwell has now had 2 back-to-back significant games. He's amassed around 13 catches for 200 yards. I think he's going to go against a kind of struggling Cincinnati defense on Monday night. I think that, the Bengals will try to aim to limit Puka Nacua, who's been, this fantasy wonder. So I really see Atwell potentially having a significant game and having a really good production there. So number 6, I hate to say it, but Adam Thielen. I've kind of kept a tab on Thielen. He's been very productive in his career with Minnesota. I think that, with Bryce Young not having any true wide receiver ones, I think that Thielen's kind of slowly growing into that. He played against a really good New Orleans defense, and Thielen was still able to find the red zone. I think that he's more of a red zone threat than people give him credit for, and I just think that Bryce Young might be having an ability to potentially find him open in the future. Number 7, going to go with Marvin Mims. I think this move is more for dynasty. If you see yourself with a long-term hold, I think really Marvin Mims could be that guy. He's a second-round pick, and against Washington, he had 2 targets and turned one of them into a score, and the other one I think was another 50-yard bomb. So look, Mims might not be an immediate impact week to week, but in the future, as he gets more reps and more targets, I think this guy's pretty explosive and could produce some crazy numbers. And number 8, going to go with Sam Laporta or Jake Ferguson. Look, if you need a tight end, you drafted Kyle Pitts. I think that you could still get some trade value for him to the next guy that's a fool that thinks Kyle Pitts is still good. So go ahead and go get Jake Ferguson or Sam Laporta. I know these guys are young. They're still solid tight ends with a lot of playing time. I think that Goff and Dak will both target them probably 6 or 7 times a game. I still think that if these guys are available and you're still needing a tight end, go for it. And that wraps up our waiver wires for week 3. If you guys have any questions or need anything else, let us know. Again, we really appreciate the comments and the likes. Just please feel free to hit subscribe below, and we'll see you next time.